Everyone spoke well of Hajj Maqsood, and his reputation was good everywhere. As for me, I was one of his biggest admirers, but I did not know that God Almighty would make his end in this mysterious and difficult way, to the point that everyone was shocked and astonished. In fact, as soon as I woke up this morning, I heard a heartbreaking piece of news that shook my heart, and the news was about Hajj Maqsood. We were eagerly waiting for Hajj Maqsood to distribute sweets to us because he was in itikaf, and as usual, every Ramadan he used to distribute sweets to the people of the neighborhood on the night of Eid in celebration of the completion of the Quran and the itikaf. I too was waiting for this day with great longing. It was the 29th day of Ramadan, and perhaps Eid would be announced tomorrow, and suddenly an announcement from the mosque surprised everyone. According to the announcement, Hajj Maqsood was found dead inside his tent where he was in itikaf, although he was not old in age, as he was only 55 years old. At this age, he had performed Hajj 4 times, but no one expected him to pass away so suddenly. No one understood how Hajj Maqsood died suddenly, even though he was not suffering from any illness and there were no signs of death on him. He was completely normal the previous night and had prayed Taraweeh with everyone, even though he was a bit silent. I thought he was occupied with the remembrance of God, but what happened after that shocked us all. I ran quickly to the mosque. I wanted to see him. I wanted to take one last look at his face because I loved and respected him greatly, but as soon as I reached the mosque, I smelled a strange and foul odor that confused me. Then the mosque's imam said to me, "My son, something very strange has happened." The imam said to me, "My son, there is a very foul smell coming from Hajj Maqsood's tent, even though he changed his clothes last night. Yet the smell is unbearable, and we cannot keep his body here for long." I felt extremely worried upon hearing this, and if I had not smelled that odor myself, I would not have believed what the imam said. But the truth is, the whole mosque was filled with that foul smell, and I could not believe that a righteous man like him could be afflicted with such a state after death. I did not comment on anything at that moment, but I returned home and told my mother what had happened. Her eyes filled with tears. She said, "People are saying that Hajj Maqsood must have committed a great sin, and that is why he is being punished now, and that God has removed the veil and revealed the truth behind his supposed righteousness. But we remembered his favors upon us. How could we forget what he did for us? He always helped us, whether with the cost of my mother's treatment or by providing us with food and essential supplies every month. And that was during the days when we lived through difficult circumstances after my father's death and our relatives had abandoned us. But Hajj Maqsood, he never forgot us. So how could a man like him have such an ending?" My mother and I were extremely confused while people were indulging in talk. As for us, we were thinking about his kindness to us. What was more painful was that even Hajj Maqsood's own family refused to wash his body because of the intense smell coming from it, to the extent that no one would go near him. So I said to my mother, "Mother, Hajj Maqsood did a lot of good for us in his life. If no one comes forward for this duty, I consider it an honor for me. What God did to him, God knows best, but we should not be ungrateful." So my mother gave me the money needed to prepare the shroud and burial, and I went to the mosque. When I arrived, I found that the shroud had already been prepared, but no one had stepped forward to wash him. Everyone was backing away out of extreme aversion, so I said to the mosque's imam, "I would like to wash Hajj Maqsood," and he replied, "I was waiting for someone like you. If he is washed, this smell may stop spreading in the mosque." Even on the imam's face, there was a kind of resentment toward Hajj Maqsood, and I began to feel pity for him. But when I began to wash him, my feelings completely changed, and I began to think internally. Although I was not someone who thought ill of others, the situation was very strange. Suddenly 2 women from his family came after they heard what happened to Hajj Maqsood and asked me to give them his shirt and the rest of his clothes. The 2 women said, "We want to take his shirt home." And as soon as I lifted Hajj Maqsood's shirt, I felt as if the ground had been pulled from beneath my feet. At that moment, I understood everything, but I was not one of those who talk about people after their death, so I said to myself, I will put a lock on my mouth and say nothing. But God's will does not leave the wrongdoer without punishment. After I washed Hajj Maqsood and he was placed on the wooden board, his body became very, very heavy to the extent that I could not lift him. Even though I was not a strong young man, I was thin and no older than 18. I tried many times, but the body did not move even an inch. My mind began to doubt more and more, so I went to the mosque's imam and told him, and he seemed surprised. He said, "I felt that something was not right with this man, but I never imagined that God would humiliate him in this way." I was surprised by his words. How could a man in his 70s or 80s talk about the deceased in such a way? The news spread everywhere that the body of Hajj Maqsood had become very heavy and no one could carry it. The imam said, "Perhaps because you are weak in build, that's why you couldn't lift him. I will bring some strong young men who lift weights daily. They will surely find a solution. How heavy can it be? One of them must be able to lift him." But I kept remembering my mother's words over and over when she said to me, "My son, no one can interfere in God's will. If the body of the Hajj is to remain this way, it will remain, and no one can change that." This heaviness is not the weight of the body, but a burden of another kind that he carries with him. Indeed, 10 strong young men were summoned, those who could easily lift 100 kilograms. But strangely, these 10 were not able to move Hajj Maqsood's body even a single step. At that moment, everyone was shocked and silence spread, so the imam said, "We must turn to God and ask him to have mercy on this body so we can perform the funeral prayer." Then the imam called everyone to pray and supplicate. People prayed 2 rak'ahs of nafil and raised their hands to the sky, pleading that God would lighten the burden on this man's body. Strangely, this prayer was actually answered. Now everyone was convinced that Hajj Maqsood had committed a great sin, and this was his punishment. And when the funeral was lifted this time, only 2 men carried it, and it was not very heavy. People began looking at the imam with admiration, as if it was his prayer that lifted the body. The coffin was placed in the funeral courtyard, and everyone performed the funeral prayer for him, but I do not know why I could not take my eyes off the coffin, as the image of the shirt never left my imagination, and I couldn't get it out of my mind. I wanted to scream and tell everyone the truth about Hajj Maqsood, but who would believe me? I am a poor young man who owns nothing. I am not a public figure, nor a social activist that people would listen to me. So I decided to remain silent again. In any case, only 1 hour remained for his burial, but it was a very heavy hour. Its weight cannot be described. When we began moving the body from the prayer courtyard to the cemetery, the coffin became heavy again, and no one could lift it. Fear began to spread in people's hearts. They remembered what had happened earlier when no one could lift the coffin until after many prayers and means. But now, even the funeral prayer had been performed. So what could be done? The imam sat with his head between his hands, and the people began to speak strange words. I heard one of them say, "Why don't we pour gasoline on him and burn him to end this matter?" At that moment, I felt great pity for Hajj Maqsood. What was happening was indeed horrible, but what people were saying was worse. And indeed, 2 young men went to the market and brought gasoline and said to the imam, "The matter is over. If we cannot lift the body, we have no choice but to burn it. We cannot keep the body of a dead man out of the grave for all this time. What's worse is that neither his wife nor his daughters appeared." perhaps out of grief for what had happened, or perhaps ignoring what was happening. But it is unimaginable that they know nothing about what's going on. Seeing this neglect from people made me unable to believe the level of cruelty that human hearts could reach. Then the Imam announced to the people, if the body is not lifted by tomorrow morning, we will have to burn it with gasoline. And large bottles of gasoline were brought and placed to the side of the area in preparation for what might happen. Someone said, who knows, maybe Hajj Maqsood was secretly a Hindu, and so his death should be like the death of Hindus. I was leaving the funeral place with a heart heavy with sorrow. I went to my mother and told her everything that had happened. She said, my son, why don't you call a doctor to examine the body of Hajj Maqsood to see what is in it that makes it unmovable? This is something only a doctor can know. Then she added, and if you find out there is no medical reason, I will tell you, wait, maybe he had a debt to someone or he left something unfinished. Perhaps he will come in someone's dream and tell them. Do not be hasty in your judgment. My mother's words about the doctor made sense. So I went to the Imam and told him. He too was sitting worried, and he said, my son, I fear this funeral may cause discord. You know how sensitive this matter is. Things like this spread quickly like wildfire, especially since a foul smell is coming from his body. People may, in their anger, violate the sanctity of the dead. Then the Imam added, I don't want that to happen, but I also can't control people's emotions. So we agreed that a doctor should be brought in to examine the body to determine the real cause. Perhaps there were changes in the body after death that caused this condition. But usually the body remains as it is. For it to become this heavy is something strange. In any case, we needed to investigate the matter carefully so no one would later say we were impatient or didn't seek the truth. Hajj Maqsood's body was covered in plastic to protect it from the rain, but I knew that in that area, cats, dogs, and other animals roamed around. How cruel this world is. A dead man who can no longer defend himself, and yet people hate him this much. So I decided to stay by the body to guard it from animals, so it wouldn't be dishonored. My mother didn't object to me staying as a guard, but by God Almighty, after I sat until 3 a.m., I no longer felt there was any need to guard it. Every animal that approached backed away on its own, as if they too were grieving the death of Hajj Maqsood. I was astonished. I couldn't understand, was Hajj Maqsood one of God's saints or someone under God's punishment? There were signs pointing to righteousness and others indicating divine anger. In any case, at 8 a.m., Dr. Moyes arrived. The Imam was present as well and said to the doctor, please proceed with examining the body. Dr. Moyes arrived, and when I saw him, I felt relieved. He looked like a pious and dignified man, but he made one condition. He said, I will examine the body alone, and if I find anything missing in the deceased or any reason for this torment, I will not tell anyone. I have no desire to disgrace anyone. His words made sense to me, so we left him alone with the body. Strangely, he didn't carry any tools, no needle, no scalpel, nothing medical. He came in empty-handed and left the same way. We asked him, what did you find? And Dr. Moyes gave a strange answer. You may now lift the body, you won't have any problem. At first, we didn't believe him. We had tried so many times and failed to move it. But based on his words, we lifted the coffin and to our amazement it moved easily. When we carried it on our shoulders, we faced no difficulty. At that moment, it was just the Imam and me. It took a long time. By then, it was around 9 a.m. and we had to bury Hajj Maqsood. The rest of the people arrived and the grave had already been dug. Hajj Maqsood was placed in it, and nothing miraculous or strange occurred during the burial. It was just like any normal funeral, and he was buried. But the matter didn't end there. Something was waiting for us afterward. Some young men who attended the burial started saying strange things. One of them said, who knows, maybe Hajj's grave will split open and he'll come out. Another said, his body was so heavy, can you imagine how his grave must be? how hard that road will be for him. But my mind was occupied with only one question. What did Dr. Moyes do? What kind of magic made this storm pass as if it never happened? But the answer to that question didn't come until a full week later. One day I saw police cars stopped in front of Hajj Maqsood's house. I ran there quickly and saw police officers, men and women. The police were taking women out of the imam's house and putting them into the police car. It was a shocking scene for everyone in the neighborhood. No one understood what had happened or what was going on. News spread that the police had arrested Hajj Maqsood's wife, and it traveled quickly throughout the area, but she was known to be a righteous woman. When we asked around and verified, we learned that Hajj Maqsood had married just a few days before his death. And it wasn't an ordinary marriage, it was a marriage to a woman who had previously worked in prostitution. He wanted to save her from that sinful path, so he married her through a valid Islamic contract and brought her into his home, even though her reputation was poor and her past was dark. But he wanted to give her safety and save her from a life of sin, and that's why he married her. But now this matter had been exposed in the neighborhood. The police arrested that woman who was still living in the house. Hajj Maqsood had many blessings from God, but he would distribute everything in the way of God. We reached the house, and when my mother returned from there, she told me the heartbreaking truth. She said, "That woman cannot be trusted. You show her mercy, she wrongs you. You wrong her, she curses you. What happened to Hajj Maqsood was her doing. She poisoned him and killed him just to get the life insurance money. For that money, she sacrificed his life. The value of it. God punished Hajj Maqsood in this world because he forgot the principle of his life and accepted interest-based money just because a woman asked him to. But God Almighty gave him justice and revealed the truth. Dr. Moyes discovered the secret when he examined the body. It was never a natural death. That's why when the truth came out, God made his burial easy and allowed the earth to accept him. All of this was by the wisdom of God. He punished him for taking interest money, even though the rest of his wealth was from lawful sources. In the end, his last sin was the cause of his suffering. Truly, usury is a war against God, and we ask God to protect us all from this sin. If you like this story, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts with us, and subscribe to the channel for more impactful stories. Thank you for listening. See you in the next episode, God willing. Until then, may God keep you safe.